Hey, good morning, everyone. Welcome to Coffee with Derek and Craig. I'm Derek Asklar. Craig Talley's on the line there. I'll host the show this morning. And kind of the topic, Craig, I just put on there trash and treasure. You know, so many times we talk about, especially to the newer people in the hobby, you go out there and you find stuff and, you're having a ball and everything, but you find a lot of stuff you don't know what the heck it is or you just think it's junk and, how not to throw it away. Keep it because, a lot of us, I did this a lot too when I was, first getting into the hobby. Well, I don't know what this is. I throw it in the junk pile. And, well, months later or whatever, I'll see somebody find something similar and find out it's something really cool or, a nice relic or whatever. That kind of happened to me yesterday. And I told Craig about this. I sent him pictures last night and I haven't posted any pictures of it up this morning or nothing like yet, but I will. Have an issue with my camera trying to get a decent shot of it. But I was out there with the Simplex the other day, and I know I dug it with the Simplex. And I was out with the Bliss tool before that. But because of the vehicle I used, I know that it had to be the Simplex because I had a box of junk, or what I called junk, and what is it, and everything else, and cast iron. I think that hunt, Craig, I probably ended up with at least 15 to 20 pounds of cast iron pieces and a whole box of just whatever. And I can remember digging this thing. I got the signal and got it out of the hole and reached down to pick it up, and I thought it was a chunk of lead. You get that fireside art or whatever, just chunks of lead randomly. And because of the way it was shaped, I said, well, it has something on here like a bolt sticking out the bottom of it. I said, I will have to figure out what that is, and I just threw it in my find bag. While I was having coffee last night, sitting on the back porch, and sitting there brushing on things. I have a little wire brush right there. I was trying to see if there was any names and stuff on cast iron or numbers or whatever, maybe get an idea and date the site a little bit. And I pick up this chunk of lead. I said, well, it's a big old piece of lead, and started brushing on it. It was so encased in like corrosion and dirt and everything. It was really like almost like a clay on there, Craig. And I started brushing on it. This is something, and it turns out it's a horse. I think it's a cast brass. It's real heavy. It's like 0.7 pounds, like over a half a pound. But it's a cast, I think it's brass horse head, cane top, like a gentleman's cane, like a Victorian era cane top. And I got the brushing on it, and I sent pictures to Craig, and I'm like, oh, check this out. And it was in my junk pile or whatever. Come to find out that on the side of it, where it connects into the cane, there's actually a hog head that is raised out of where it fit into the palm of your hand, comes out the side, and on the other side of it is a gator head. So I mean, it was like, oh, okay, this is really ornate. I can't find anything online. I see other ones, but they're very not. I'm not going to say generic. I mean, they're very plain. It'd be a horse head cane, but these are real popular back then, I guess. The different styles, animal heads or rounded ones, what have you. So yeah, I mean, your junk, you got to be real careful. I almost threw it away myself. I just know, I've learned from the past to keep stuff until you know exactly what it is, or if it really is junk. Because I know, Craig, you've done this with like the company letters and stuff like that you find. They're folded up or whatever, and you think most people, and I probably would too, think that it's just a folded up piece of copper. But
now, if you're doing any kind of relic hunting, like from the Civil War, keep everything that's lead and brass. Some of the stuff I've dug. One time I dug this huge piece of brass, and I couldn't figure out what it was. I knew it was something, and I'm not real visual, but I guess I was dreaming about it or something, and when I woke up, I knew exactly what it was, and it was a stirrup. It was a huge, brass stirrup, and it had broken like one side completely off, and had a hard time visualizing what it was, but that was a pretty good find, even though it was broken, because it was definitely heavy duty military type brass stirrup.
Mm-hmm.
But I anything brass, you want to keep, because that's, they made the buttons out of brass, they made the stirrups, the what do you call it, the spurs. There's so much stuff that was made out of brass back then that even like the knapsack hooks and stuff, scabbards, there's so much brass artifacts that you kind of want to keep, brass until you, especially if you're a newbie and you've never dug stuff like this before, and keep all that stuff, because I've seen people, suddenly say, "Oh my God, I threw stuff away and I didn't know what it was, and now I know, and I threw all this, threw
right.
stuff away that was, an actual relic." Relics, a lot of times are broken. They're not in good shape,
right?
Because one thing I've seen over the past, years is, especially newbies in the hobby, they get very upset because the stuff isn't in perfect shape, and I go, most of this stuff was discarded, because it was broken,
Mm-hmm.
War is hell on equipment, and troops, in camp and stuff, we're always breaking stuff. I mean, you can imagine, all the, the stuff, a lot of this stuff was shoddily made, at the start of the war. A lot of manufacturers started putting out stuff for the soldiers and military contractors, and it's kind of like nowadays people cheat, and they did. Yep. Some of the stuff was poor quality and broke, right away.
Well, it's also like 200 years old and been in the ground all that time, getting run over, stepped on, beat up, and
ground action from the water in the ground.
And the stuff that I'm finding, Craig, is so, like the horse bit. I've been soaking it for 2 or 3 weeks in molasses and water, and the same with the stirrup. And I was telling Craig before the show, I said, I'm not doing anything else with it. I thought about doing electrolysis, but it's getting to the point now, it's still kind of encrusted with, I mean, this thing's old. I mean, it's flat out old. It's got to be early 1800s is what I'm thinking, because it's so encrusted that if I take anything else off, or if I do anything more aggressive, it's going to fall apart. It's going to break. It's just that brittle. And as I get down farther, because there's a few spots where the nubs have come off, Craig, the nubs of corrosion, and it's really black. It looks like it's like fibrous.
Like a carbuncle.
Yeah.
It gets like a blister almost on them.
Right. It's got, if you look inside where the blister was, it looks like it has a grain to it. So I know that it's not going to be feasible to clean it anymore. I'm just done cleaning it. It's the way it is, because I don't want to break it. And that's the way everything is coming out of the ground. It's just really, really, like the button. It just collapsed on me, when I was cleaning the back of it. I'm not touching it anymore. But what it shows, I think, is it's painting a picture of the site. This site is loaded. And I think that there's a lot of coins there, Craig. I mean, I'm finding quality items, the Victorian, late 1880s button, ladies dress adornment button. It's not really an actual button you would use. It's just an adornment of bling for a very fancy dress. And now the cane head that's really ornate. I can't find an example of it, but I know it's kind of Florida because it has a gator and a wild hog on it. And that's, two things that have been down here for, ever. We have a lot of wild hogs in this county anyways, even today. So it's kind of unique to this area. But it was a gentleman that wore that. That's not something that a regular cowhand would wear or carry. It was a show of status. So why wouldn't there be a bunch of coins there? I'm finding everything else. So I think is where they mounted up on horses and got into wagons, only because of the way the button. If you look at the button along the one, I think it's the left-hand side of it as you're looking at the lady's head on there, you can see where the brass has been pulled a little bit up from where it was seated at. It's almost like it got snagged on something and ripped it right off her dress. So I'm thinking maybe she was getting into a wagon or whatever, and that happened. The same thing with the cane. The cane Canehead I found about 35 feet away from where I found the button at. But that place is loaded. And I even said it in the videos that, I mean, there's signals everywhere, but I'm not going to sit there. I'm just trying to unlayer the history. I got to get the biggest stuff off the top, the strongest signals, get them out of there, because there's tons of little signals, deep ones. I figured I found the button at like 8 inches, 9 inches down. Dimes could be, 10, 11, 12 inches down. And the ground is so super hard. It's from, 200 years of cattle being on it and, jammed, packing that sand. It's almost like dealing with like a wet clay sand, Craig. Well, you see the shovel. When I punch it into the ground, you think we deal with just regular old sand down here in Florida. But when you get that St. Augustine grass, the true St. Augustine grass growing, that stuff vines, and it'll grow right over concrete. Now, this stuff is pretty aggressive. But the natural one, the natural St. Augustine grass, my shovel's bending. That shovel's pretty stout, the one I use, and I'm bending, or you can see the warp in it when I'm popping these plugs out of the ground. That's the kind of soil I'm dealing with, and all the stuff is just packed in there, which is actually a good thing, because I think it kept a lot of the oxygen. We talk about that a lot of times. The stuff doesn't get as oxidized, but it does get a dirt packed oxidization. A lot of dirt kind of starts getting to be like concrete almost on top of some of these relics in this cast iron. But I have 3 or 4 more pieces in there that I just threw in the junk box, thinking that, well, it's cast iron, but I'm going to go back and through and look through them. This all started because of my wife. She doesn't come out detecting with me, but I'll bring all the stuff home, and we have like a old wrought iron table out back. We sit down and watch nature or whatever, and I'll set the box of stuff or whatever I have on there, and she'll sit there and mess with it. She goes, "What's this?" And she'll start cleaning on it or whatever. So that's what I had originally done it for, and then I ended up finding that horse head. I was like, "What the heck?" I couldn't believe it 2 or 3 days after I find it. It's always a nice feeling when you're finding relics and you're not even out metal detecting. So,
well, one of the skills you learn is, you become kind of a detective, over a while. You're trying to, track down what these artifacts are and relics. And I remember when I first started, I didn't know what probably 90% of what I was taking was at first, and I'd run over to my friend's house, that he'd been doing it for a long time, and he could pretty much tell me what the stuff was, but he says it's really funny. He said within 2 or 3 years, he said, I was coming to your house to find out what I was finding. And that's how I got into once I got into it. It was like I was going out every weekend, and then I started going out after as soon as I get off work, I'd go out for a couple hours to this one park. But, it just kind of took over. I was, into tennis, and I just got to the point where, I didn't care about tennis that much anymore, as far as playing.
Yeah.
I just, people couldn't understand, kind of a weird hobby you're in, and you drop tennis. And I said, I don't know, but I just like this better. It's just
you're painting a picture, man. That's what it is. I mean, I think that's why I get so frustrated when I hear people say, "Oh, you're out, you guys are grave diggers and you're this and that." And no, we're not. We're saving history. We're painting a picture of history that most of the time has been forgotten or is forgotten. We're cleaning up the environment. I mean, I'm going to save everything from this site, Craig, and I want to take a picture of it because I know I have dug at least 50 pounds of cast iron. I've dug lead. I've dug brass, copper, chunks. I mean, just the sheer amount of metal items that I've dug out of the ground. And we all do this. I mean, I see, you watch these videos of stealth diggers or whoever else, and I have all this pile of junk. You're cleaning up the environment. Lead was so rampant. I find lead everywhere. Back in the 1800s and early 1900s, they used it to seal gutters. They used it to seal pipes. They use lead so much, and it's all over the place. And I know I've dug at least 30-pound pieces of lead out of the ground, out in the middle of a pasture of all things, and they carried this stuff and they used what they had to use. But getting this stuff out of the environment, getting all the bottle caps and stuff off the beach, and tent stakes and rusty metal, and you're saving people from getting hurt or in a park area. I mean, I'll say it in my videos too. I found these, and I found out what those stainless steel things were. Gray, I don't know if you watched the last video. The rods, they were curtain rods. They're actually, John was dragging a grill, some kind of fancy grill that somebody discarded, and he says, well, I was just trying to drag it over to get it onto the trailer with his truck, and I guess he drug it and it busted apart, and all those rods went everywhere. And I'm finding those rods stuck in the ground. But you can imagine if a horse or a cow or even a person walked by and those were sticking up out of the ground a little bit, punch right through a hoof, because they actually have steel inside of the stainless steel tube. So yeah, you're pulling stuff out of the ground, and I just like the picture it paints, and you're cleaning up the environment. What the heck? I don't see what's anything wrong with that, because it's all stuff that's been disregarded, over the years, or just dropped. You're walking on it right now when you're out there in your backyards. If you have it's just there.
I've been on Civil War sites where it's in the middle of the city, and it's like a wooded area right between like two housing projects, or
right.
two condominium projects. And there was one in particular I started hunting. It was right next to an old pool that I'd gone to when I was a kid, and it's a big ridge with a creek at the bottom, and they were going to do a housing site there, and we got permission, and they'd done one cut through the woods with a bulldozer, and they went around in a circle, and we got, I think it was 3 days to hunt it, and then once they took the woods down, then we got permission to park at the one condo, and they let us go onto the site and hunt, but it was just loaded. I mean, and the good thing about it was, in the early days, it was covered with sticker bushes, and I talked to one relic hunter, and one of those guys crawled up under there one time, and he found 5 SNY belt buckles in an hour.
Oh my God. I've been having a heart attack.
Yeah. And I remember I went up there, and they'd bulldozed kind of close to the street, and I found a 12th New York button. They're kind of rare, and I actually had a diary that the 12th New York had camped next to the 2nd Michigan in that area. And the 12th New York, the Michigan guys were, from the country, and the New York guys were from the city. And the Michigan guys talked about how uncouth and the New Yorkers just had the worst. They were just the worst people they'd ever seen. They were cussing, they were whoring, they were drinking, they were gambling. They were, just every vice.
Right.
And the country guys, they worked hard, and they were basically farmers coming from Michigan, and so they just couldn't stand these people. And there was a funny incident in the diary where they, in the middle of the winter, they would have, they would make the guys, form ranks and have inspections and all kinds of stuff like that, and they would, basically got a lot of these guys that were drunk, from the night before, and they didn't want to come out, and so all the Michigan guys would be up there, and on the drill field, and all of a sudden, the New York guys weren't coming up, or some of them would be staggering up. So at one point, the commanding officer told them to put the bayonets on and drive the New Yorkers into the field, and to get them
out there, yeah.
and so this one sergeant was remarking that he wished that one guy would disobey the orders so he could stick him with his bayonet. But they were talking about how horrible these people from New York were, and most of New York probably supplied most of the troops, or good percentage of the Union troops. New York was a huge state back then, and
yeah.
But it's kind of funny. We were up there one day, and we were finding New York buttons, and a friend of mine walked up, and he said, "I've been hunting for an hour. I can't find anything." And I said, he goes, "What are you guys finding?" I said, "Man, we're finding New York buttons everywhere." And he's like, "I can't find one." So we all had white Spectrums at the time, and it was getting dark, so I had my light on, and so I finally said, "It's too dark. I'm going to just come back tomorrow." So about three of us were walking back to the truck. I turned around and looked, and I could see the guy up in the woods with the light still going.
Yep.
He wouldn't leave, and the next day he goes, "I finally got one, but I could barely see, And I said, but
hey, some days,
that was a some of these places, like I was saying, between the condos, there's cross contamination from modern trash over top of the good stuff. So it's like you said, you have to get the trash up, in order to find the good stuff underneath.
Yeah, layer it.
And and one good thing was, we were doing that, but then they came in and bulldozed and took like a foot off, and that's when I found the SMY belt buckle, and it was probably down in a hut site. It had been, filled in over the years, with just the leaves and stuff, and you couldn't tell that there was hut sites there, but you knew that they had to have had hut sites there because it was, they were there in the winter.
Right.
But and also from the diaries, that they were talking. But it was right along this real steep creek, and it was, that's, you don't see the soldiers away from water. They're fairly close to water usually, because
they had water supply.
Like
yeah,
they had to water horses. They had to water themselves. Needed it for cooking and cleaning and.
Bathing,
water was
everything,
very important. They never usually camped further than a half a mile from water. It just wasn't practical.
Well, they laid this stuff up, and you said a good thing about modern trash. I have a place literally almost across the street from me that was it's been vacant lot. Trees growing, vines growing. Well, I guess somebody bought the property. It's like a little acre parcel. And they got in there with the skid steers with the the grapplers on the front of it, and cleaned up the property. And I was looking at it yesterday, just briefly as I went by, slowed down and looked. Oh my God, Craig, the trash, the cans, the aluminum, the steel. I mean, they're using the grappler and kind of like going, and the trees that are about, I don't know, a half a foot across, they're topping them and then digging with the little backhoe they have and pulling them out of the ground. And all you see is this little glimmers of metal and stuff like that. I'm like, man, it's trashy. And that's the way my yard was. I mean, I found a bottle dump on my yard, but every bottle is just almost pulverized. Just broken up so much. A glass pile is what it amounts to. And then I found a trash pile. But back then, and back a long time ago, they didn't have a trash service. They just picked a pile for cans and a pile for bottles. And sometimes they threw them together, but a lot of times they separated them. And Craig and I find it, like Breastplate Hill's perfect example. When we went there, we walk into the place, it's right by a high school, and then you go down this little embankment. It's all nothing but bottles, broken bottles and everything else down through there. And then you get into Breastplate Hill, and then we're digging up I dug a lot of modern pull tabs and cans and eraser tips, but then you turn right around and find a trigger guard, and I find a bullet, a 3-ringer, right amongst the junk. It's just, you got to get this stuff out of the way. You're not going to find the good stuff underneath, and it's kind of crazy when you do it. I mean, like in my video, I said, I'm very methodical. I'm very moving an inch at a time, but it's like, okay, I'm just going to walk around, and any good signal that comes through, I don't care what the VDI number is, I'm just digging it. If it sounds good, if it's repeatable, I'm digging it, getting it out of the way. Well, I started pulling this cast iron pieces out. I pull it out of the way, and then about 6 inches over, I'm getting another signal. And it's it might be a shotgun shell, it might be whatever, but it's non-ferrous. And it just goes to show how much a lot of these sites are masked. I've done plantation properties before and dug thousands of relics and coins. I mean, but I dug my fair share of junk too. A lot of us do. I mean, if Stealth Diggers or Hoover Boys or whatever kind of videos you guys like watching, even Nugget Noggin's another one. From the time he was a kid, you look in the back of his pickup truck and it's filled with junk. But that's how much stuff you pull off a site and clean it up. And John was telling me that last night about it.
If you look at the latest Stealth Diggers, they went out to they went out to several sites. The last 2 or 3 videos, but one of them was a site where it was like a 1710 house or something, and it was a lot of the original stuff there. And the one guy that owns the house has been friends with a Stealth Digger and hunter, and he metal detects, and he didn't find a whole lot on his property. And it turns out that the original house, the front door is facing the opposite way of the addition that is now the front of the house. And there was one little section that the ground wasn't contaminated, with junk from the modern junk, and they actually found more stuff than the guy had found in 15 years. But this site looked, it was just amazing. But then they went over to there's this woman called the Guru, and she's got a colonial cellar hole in her backyard, and they'd gone over there and found stuff in the past where they basically dug pits. And so they went over there again with the whole crew and started digging. And they actually, one of the guys found his first Spanish real. I think it was 1777 or 78 or something like that.
That's cool. Yeah.
But they started digging down, and they got down a couple feet, and they just, started going through the dirt, and they found there was all kinds of pot shards, and they found a lot of buttons and things like that. So one thing is they're starting to people are starting to reach out to them to say, hey, you want to come to our property and see if you can find stuff on our property, and some of these towns are starting to think, man, we could bring these guys in because they got the integrity. They've already shown that they're into the history and they're saving it for this one town that they live in. So there's other towns starting to reach out that, hey, we'd like to have, a nice display like that of our colonial history, from our town.
Right.
So it's not a bad, one thing is people kind of get greedy. They want to keep everything. I think to me, the fun of metal detecting is finding things and being able to dig, continuously dig, and have new spots to dig at, and things like that. I want to be, I basically go out for at least an hour in my yard every day, or until I find something good, or one good thing. But it's not so much about keeping the item. Once you find it, it's you're thrilled for a little while, but then you're looking, you're on your next hunt for something else. It's always like that. And
that's why I started doing these videos the way I'm doing them. I like doing them this way, just kind of going with it, because I'm clueless. I don't know what's going on any more than you do. I don't know what I'm going to dig out of the ground. To me, it's just painting a picture, it's telling a story of that piece of property. And with a lot of the landowners, when I do their property, that's more of a thrill for them. They don't mind what I find, and I usually give them a lot of the stuff if they want it. But it paints them a picture. It tells the history of their property in some way, shape, or form. And I think that's what John likes. And Mark over at the other property, the Toll Bridge property, That's what he's wanting. I want to know what went on my property. I want to know what the history was of it. And as you're finding bits and bobs and relics of the past, at least you're dating a site and helping them out and giving them something to talk about. I mean, you're giving them, it's nice to know, like my property. I know it was along the Stagecoach Road. I found standing, walking Liberty coins and V nickels and stuff like that on here, but I got a ton of trash. But I enjoy, having that piece of history of my property, and that's what I think that a lot of us give these landowners is some insight into where they're living at, what went on, and it's a neat talking point if anything else. And when you give them some of the relics, like some of this stuff, I want to put into like a showcase and give it to John and say, hey, you can, here's the stuff that I got for you that's that's decent enough, that has history, and he'll hang it up. I know he will, or he'll at least show people. I mean, I've given him, I give a lot of stuff away. I mean, because I can't keep all of it, Craig. I got so much. I was looking around just in pennies. I probably got, I don't know, coffee cans full of wheat pennies and stuff, and I use like shotgun shells. Good God! I mean, I have so many paper rounds. I use them as like an adornment around the frame on a showcase or something like that. And people think that's kind of neat too. My mom still puts, she goes, I leave it out there. I made one for my dad years ago with all these different relics that I found from, around in Bushnell and stuff like that. She puts it right on the coffee table and moves it around and dusts it. She goes, everybody that comes over looks at that thing, because she's, part of the I don't know, they got these CDDs down here, the deed restriction communities, and they have to have president and vice president and all that stuff to keep track of, monies and what's going on in the housing edition. So people come over and, bring their paperwork or whatever else. Every one of them looks at that thing. They're like, oh my God, that's so cool. And I made it with a flip lid where you can flip it up and you can actually, they're secured in there, but you can kind of get a better look at them. But I have stuff like, a drill sergeant's whistle, an old poppy pin from the 20s, and musket ball, the Seminole Indian rounds, and maybe a couple coins in there too, I think. Barber dime, and but when's the last time these people saw anything like that? That's what we have a hard time figuring out what stuff is because of that. You don't know a bucket list item. I mean, I don't think about cane heads, the walking canes and stuff like that. I mean, Pauline was laughing at me. She goes, I suppose that's on your bucket list too. I said, I just filled it. So didn't even know what I was looking for, but I found something I wanted somehow. And the buttons. And,
one of the things I've done over the years is, somebody will come in and you're digging up all this junk and stuff, and I'll grab like a big Civil War bullet and go, hey, check this out, and drop it in their hand.
Yeah, it's like,
you wouldn't
cool.
believe the look on, you wouldn't believe the look on people's faces. They go, oh my God, is this a Civil War bullet? And I go, yeah. They go, oh my God, it's so heavy.
Yeah.
I say, yeah, they weigh about an ounce for 58 caliber, and they go, wow. And I said, just think of that thing hitting, somebody.
Oh,
I said,
good God, yeah.
I said, it's not like the modern bullets nowadays that are lighter. They're when they hit, if they hit a bone, they just bust it right through the bone, and
disintegrated.
They had so many. Yeah, they just, they couldn't do anything to save these people's limbs and stuff once it busted a bone like that, and they would just amputate, and these bullets did terrible damage to people, and so the ones nowadays they go a lot faster and they spin, they rip you up, but they don't have the mass that these Civil War bullets had.
Yeah.
It's a whole different thing.
Well, it's people don't realize how the tyranny, the pure. I mean, they're not exaggerating. It's the new people that are into the hobby. I mean, you're talking piles of amputated limbs. I mean, they just when in doubt cut it off essentially because they couldn't do anything for them. I mean, it's just the amount of tyranny that goes on during war. It just it's scary. I mean, I've never liked the idea of war. It happens and everything, but it's not something you ever want your family member or something to go do. All the stuff they're doing nowadays, Craig. having to go over,
Yeah.
these different conflicts and everything else. And, being involved with the VFW and stuff like that, a lot of, good, well, turned into pretty good friends from all eras. I mean, I got Korean War friends, and Vietnam, and even, the this whole Desert Storm in Afghanistan and all that stuff. A lot of them are coming back, and, it's not something anybody should have to go through, but, you have to, it's just, but, just trying to, save that history, from, the Civil War history or Revolutionary War. It's all, stories that need to be told. And a lot of times it'd just be forgotten, lost to the sands of time, so to speak. That's what I love about the hobby so much is you're actually painting a picture. So
kind of like lessons of history,
Yeah.
Some of the lessons aren't so pleasant,
No.
People want to kind of ignore them, but those are the kind of ones that you want to keep, in your mind, so they don't happen again,
Oh yeah.
These atrocities kind of, come with war, and you always have like periods of war. It's happened all through mankind for thousands of years.
Mm-hmm.
Who knows how long it went back, but even tribes fought each other. Indians and stuff. It's just man has gotten into this kind of stuff. It's
well, without history, if you don't find the history, you're doomed to make the same, or your kids or whatever, are doomed to make the same mistakes you did, or your grandparents, or whatever. The mistakes we've made as a civilization will repeat if we don't remember and understand what we did in the past. I mean, more just it's kind of like a deep topic, anyways. But that's why I think that in schools and stuff, I remember in history class, and it was a whole lot of dates. Date this, and happened on this date, and it involved this one person, and it wasn't interesting. It was so contrived, or so. It wasn't fun. I mean, I hated history in high school. I just it was a waste of time. I really didn't care about anything. So.
I've done several talks, with groups where I've taken, artifacts in and showed them, and people, just, the artifacts is, just draw people, and they're just so fascinated. All of a sudden, they get an interest, that
mm-hmm.
It's like you say, these dates, and you're kind of, your mind kind of, thinks about it, but you don't really see a visual picture much or anything. But when you look at this stuff, it especially these bullets. I mean, the bullets are just totally different, back then than they are nowadays.
Mm-hmm.
They're pretty huge compared to what the bullets are nowadays. But people just they get a connection to it, and all of a sudden they go, "Wow, I never knew this," and it creates an interest. I've seen it. It's like I said, dropping a bullet into somebody's hand. It almost is shocking to them, how heavy. They didn't realize this. They had no idea. I tell them stuff, about the troops were camped over here. I said, people would say, why are these bullets in your yard? There's no Civil War battle here.
Mm-hmm.
Was there? And I go, no. I said 100,000 troops, 150,000 troops visited this hill during the Civil War.
Yep.
They go, really? I've never heard that before.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, I know it. I said, it's a shame. But I said, did you know that Alexandria was the first city invaded during the Civil War by the Union? No, I had no idea about that. And I said, yeah. We were an occupied town by, the whole war pretty much,
And this goes on all over the world too, Craig. I mean, when you think about Romans, the Roman Empire, the Persians, the Vikings, they made such a big footprint. Especially the Romans, they were, everywhere. I'm sure that, these guys find stuff all the time, and the, Iron Age and all, just crazy stuff by, large groups. I mean, you think about 100,000 troops camp. Picture a football stadium full of people. That's how many people, how many soldiers were there. That's a lot of dang people to be in a small area. So yeah, you're going to find tons of stuff, and tons of stuff is there. And it's being forgotten. It's wasted away to nothing. It's on, really, we talk about archaeology and everything on this show too. And, they do stuff a different way than we do. There's a lot of archaeologists that probably use metal detectors. I mean, I know several of them that do. And it's just a different form of archaeology. It's a different form of saving history. Not everybody does it the same, and yeah, you have bad apples on both sides of the fence, and even in archaeology you do. But I think essentially, most people are trying to save stuff. They're trying to, I think it's pretty cool to own some of this stuff and display some of this stuff. It's stuff I treasure, the stuff I find in the ground or whatever. There's stuff that people will, even people that sell the stuff they find. I have no problem with it anymore. The more I think about it, Craig, and I think we've talked about it many times, somebody's going to buy that. They're paying you for it, and they're going to treasure it. They're paying money for it. They want to treasure it themselves, so it's always going to have a place, and be well kept. It's not going to be thrown in the garbage can, And there's a lot of the stuff too that you don't even know what the heck you're finding. You really have no clue. I had no clue about the horse head, cane handle, head, whatever. The Victorian button. I had to send you a picture, Craig. You had to kind of tell me and get me on the right track with it because I had no idea what I had. And I've been doing this for, going on 20 years now. Most of this stuff, I've found some weird stuff over the years, and I've never found any photos or record of it. And it's like the one-drop oiler, the Shakespeare one-drop oiler that I found from 1921. Still can't find a photo of it anywhere except for the one I posted. And it says Shakespeare on it and everything else. You can't, you have to get a magnifying glass to see it, which is kind of weird. But if you can't find another example of it, you got something special there. And I know a lot of you guys do. I see some, like Peter Beaufoy, when he posts stuff up, he finds in New Zealand or whatever. This stuff is it's very rare. I've never seen anything like it, Craig. And a lot of times I don't even know what I'm looking at. Even from the guys over in the UK, these hammered coins and stuff, we've kind of grown used to, but they find a lot of medieval stuff and everything else. I'm sure that you got to kind of look at it and think about what the heck it be used for.
It go all the way back, to the Romans and even before that, the Celtics and stuff. But
they have the area to do it in.
If you want to see an interesting couple stories, I put a couple things I saw last night on the Hardcore Metal Detecting page, and one of them is about giants. And I didn't know this, but I've heard about these giants being found in America and then also in South America. And some of these giants are as high as the highest I've ever heard is like 30 feet tall. But I didn't know it, but Cortez and Spanish people and all kinds of people saw these giants when they came to America. And evidently there wasn't a lot of them, but there was people that were 9 feet, 12 feet tall, and they found the bones all over the place. And this YouTube channel that I was watching this stuff on says that a lot of them were dug out of these mounds. The mound builders were,
right.
A lot of the natives that, said that there was giants around, and that their ancestors had, also said that that these giants that had been around, and some of them, were, killing the other people. Giants were, not very likable people or something. They said they had a very bad continence or something.
Constitution, yeah.
Yeah, but there's a map where I saw a map where where all these different bodies were found, and they're all over the whole United States. West Coast, East Coast, middle of the country, north, south, everywhere. And then there's
I'm gonna look at that.
It's really fascinating. But there's I saw I think it was about a year ago that there was this giant of Andalar or Andakar, and it was in Afghanistan, and it's in this report, but supposedly this patrol went missing, a special forces guy, so they sent another group to this area, and when they got there, they saw like human bones all over the ground, and this giant comes out that's 13 feet tall and throws this spear and kills this one special forces guy, and then they open fire, and and it's like the bullets are hitting this guy, but he's not really feeling the effects of it. And one of the soldiers start, shoot him in the face, and so after about 30 shots to the face, they kill it. And so then they're ordered to pack up this body, and it goes on a helicopter, and it disappears. And so, according to this little movie, this YouTube thing, the Smithsonian started either paying or collecting these bodies, starting in the 1800s, and they got these bodies, but they're in the bones, but nobody's ever heard anything more about them. And today you don't hear this, that nobody believe that these giants really existed, but.
I watch Ancient Aliens. I watch that show every once in a while. It's it's kind of fringe stuff, but I mean, they go and investigate stuff. They talked about giants a couple of times over in, oh God, was it Egypt or I don't know. They're all over the world.
They're all over the world. Yeah.
There's a race of people.
A race of giants.
Or giants.
Well, there's also, you read about pygmies, and the little people.
Yep.
So, it's kind of fascinating.
Well, you have to remember, too, 10%, they've only found 10% of the civilizations in the world. 10%. That's a lot of civilizations left to find. And they are finding more and more. They're finding more and more evidence, even here in the United States. I mean, we hear the rumors, we hear the stories, and, even like the recent one about the Egyptian hieroglyphics in, was it Colorado or whatever, and they got it all blocked off and nobody can go see it. I mean, there's stuff Mayans, Incas. I mean, they were all, and what was before them? That's the thing. They were talking. I was watching this show, Investigation Unknown with Josh Gates. Love that show. And he's an archaeologist, but he uses metal detector and everything as he investigates a lot of stuff. But he was investigating Genghis Khan, where he was buried at. I guess it's a big mystery. Nobody knows where he's buried at, and he was going on this trail and finding that. Okay, the Mongolians, I mean, who came before them? And they have that. There's a big burial ground of this civilization that was before them. And it just goes back and back and back, and where's the beginning of it? You deal with it in Iraq, with the before, who I'm talking about, Craig, the Anunnaki. And stuff like that. You guys just never know what you're going to dig up. I've seen people dig up spark plugs that were actually fused inside a stone, and all the top and the bottom are showing, and it's actually physically in the stone, like the stone was melted around the spark plug. And they look like spark plugs from like a Model T or something like that. They found them out in the middle of the desert somewhere in Colorado or Arizona, or New Mexico.
Yeah,
just weird stuff. Weird
thing
stuff.
About giants, they show actual footprints that are fossilized that show like this. God, the foot was like 3 feet long or something, and they're actually, you can see the toes and everything.
Yep, real neat stuff. I'm gonna look at it, Craig. If you got it on the Facebook page, oh, that's good. I'm gonna check it out this morning. I'll post some pictures. I'm just gonna post up the pictures I got of that cane head that I have already. I'm still cleaning it. I've been sitting in there. Pauline goes, my wife says, "What are you doing?" She did this last night. It's like 11:30 at night, and I'm with a toothbrush over here, sitting in my chair, brushing on this horse head, trying to get the. I don't want to ruin it, I'm just trying to pull the dirt or whatever, the little bit of corrosion kind of stuff on there. I thought it was lead at first. It may very well be lead. But I think it's brass. It's a weird. It's heavy. That's why I thought it was lead to begin with when I put it in my find bag.
Well, if it might be pewter even. I don't know what color it is, but
it's kind of got a grayish. The pits in it where it's pitted, it's gray. It's not like a brass color. That's why I was thinking it was cast brass. It's heavier than cast iron. So
it could be pewter even though.
It very well could be, and it's pretty ornate. I mean, I happen to be looking at the sides of it. So what are these little things on the side of it? It's right at the bottom of the horse's neck. And I thought it was, I don't know, I thought it was going to be the saddle, like the saddle horn, or the edges of the saddle, not the saddle horn itself. But even on the center of the back of the neck, there's like an ornate thing. I'm trying to get it to come out so we can see exactly what it is and see if maybe there's a maker's name on there. But yeah, one side has a hog head, and the other side, I'm almost 99% sure it's a gator head. It's like like added to it. Not added, but it was part of the cast when they poured it. Just very unique. I've never seen one. I found another cane head years ago, but it was one of more of a standard, like the wood-looking silver 1920s kind of canes, straight tea cane kind of thing, but it's made with some sterling silver or whatever else, or plated. This one's definitely older. At least I think it is, and I found it close enough to where that 1880s button was. I'm almost positive this thing is 1800s anyways. But it's just neat finding something like that. But I'll post that up on Facebook this morning. I got to kind of get going, so you know me, Craig. I'm always going 100 mile an hour down a dead end road, so I got to get going today. But we'll talk to you guys tomorrow night. I'm going to go out with the Simplex tomorrow, Craig, again, and hunt that plantation property again. I'm just going to keep on hitting it until I don't have no targets left, which is going to take me quite a long time, I think. But hey, I'm having fun though. At least I'm finding something. By God, having 2.5, 3 months of not finding anything but shotgun shells. Whew, that can make you a believer real quick. We all have our slumps. Yeah,
you were due. You were due for a good spot to dig. I mean, you hadn't had one in a while.
I wouldn't wish that on my worst enemy in metal detecting, is finding nothing but modern bullets and older shotgun shells and scrap junk. Just cans and stuff.
I told Derek you need a break from that other spot. You can go out and check that other spot out.
I get so doggone determined. It's like I gotta find something. I know something's here. I get into that mode and I don't want it to defeat me. It's like a competition in my head. Stick with
you can always go back to that spot.
Oh yeah.
But it's nice to have a spot where you're kind of excited. There's stuff there, and that you've dug some nice stuff out of the ground so far, and that's what it's all about. It's
Paulie.
To me, finding a nice spot where you're really digging some cool stuff there's nothing like it.
No, it's an adrenaline rush in itself. And my wife's laughing now at me last night. She goes, and she saw me get up out of the chair, a twinge. I got this muscle spasm thing in my side, and it's been going on since I went out hunting the other day. She goes, see, and now I bet you complain because you have sore muscles because you're working your metal detecting too much. I said, no, I'm having muscle spasms because I'm digging too much. Using the shovel too much. Because I probably dug, at least 100 holes that day, the hard ground and everything. But, we're just laughing about it. She goes, crib when you don't find nothing and crib when you do. I said, yeah, I'm just cribbing. So,
I've been out where, where you start digging and you're digging for hours and you don't even realize it. You don't even realize you're tired.
Right.
And then and then you're on your way back to the car. I used to sometimes have to walk a mile to get back to the car, and you're like, oh my God, I'm dying. I didn't realize I was this tired, but you're like in a frenzy digging, and you got all this energy, and then as soon as you stop, you go,
I start setting this stuff on the ground. Well, it's like, all the casts and all the stuff I'm finding. I'm having to go back to the car at least 6 times a hunt, because I can't carry anything else. My fine bags, thank God I have those fine bags I had made are really strong, because I'm, all the cast iron and pieces of steel and brass and lead and everything else, man. You have to go back to the car at least 4 or 5 times because you don't have anywhere else to carry it. It's just they're weighting you down. I go back to the car with 20 pounds of stuff. So.
When I was hunting the 4th Texas and the 18th Georgia camps, there was a lot of bricks in the hut sites and chimneys made and all kinds of stuff. The guys were basically taking the bricks, carrying them out, sometimes 100 yards, they would carry as many bricks as they could. They were like staggering.
Wow.
Some guys were coming in and taking chalk and actually marking the bricks so they could put them back together like they were.
That's cool. Saving it. Yeah.
And, sometimes guys would be digging a hut site and they hit a brick floor, and they take all the bricks out. And one guy had them embedded in his backyard, just like they were in the hut.
That's cool. I like that idea. That's a good idea.
That's one thing I haven't done is grab bricks, But I saw these guys staggering up this hill at the 18th Georgia camp. It was amazing. I was like, and this guy goes, "What the heck are these guys taking us bricks for?" And I said, "They were lining up. They were fireplaces. They're going to put them back together and stuff. There was one that was like 6 feet tall, and you didn't even know it. The dirt had
covered it all over
down the hill. Yeah, it was like up against a hill, and it was a hearth and everything.
Jeez.
And
you have to talk about that next show, Craig, a little bit, maybe tomorrow night. Greg Pompano said, or Plano, I can never say his last name. Florida Hunt 6. Greg, I told him give us a call sometime. He still thought we were on Thursday nights, and we're just on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and mornings, and then Saturday nights. So he may call in tomorrow. I got signed up for that hunt here in Florida Hunt 6, but I didn't really. That thing packed up quick, Craig. It was like 179 spots or something. I think I'm 165, so I almost didn't even make the hunt. But it's in February, I think. I can't remember when he said it was. He'll get on the show though. We haven't talked to Greg in a while, but he's been busy with stuff too. He's always working and running around like we are. So, but yeah, let's wrap this up. I got to fly, so I guess we'll do the show tomorrow night, guys. And be safe out there. Save all the history you can, and we'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.